It was supposed to be a family trip, a reunion, they said, a chance to reconnect. But by the time I saw the flight details, I knew exactly what they meant. My name is Doris. I'm 74 years old, and for the better part of the last decade, I've lived in the quiet shadows of my family. I babysat when needed, kept quiet at dinners, sent cards nobody opened, and nodded politely when they made plans without me. But this time, felt different. It was my daughter-in-law, Lynn, who called me. Her voice was sugary sweet, the kind that leaves a strange aftertaste. "Hi, Mum. We're planning a family getaway, kind of a reunion/vacation. The kids have been begging for a break, and we thought it would be lovely to have you join us." I paused. It had been years since I was included in anything that didn't involve watching their dog or dropping off casseroles. "That sounds lovely," I replied cautiously. "Oh, good. We already booked the flights. All you have to do is pack. We'll send you everything you need. No stress at all. Just be ready on Friday." I should have known then. But a part of me, some naive sliver still hoping to be wanted, felt warm. Maybe they were finally trying. Maybe I'd be part of something again. A memory, a photo album, anything. That night, I got an email titled "Itinerary Family Reunion" from a travel agency I'd never heard of. I clicked it, expecting a flight with my son and his family, maybe even seats together. Instead, what I saw stopped me cold. Departure, 4:45 a.m. Layover 1, Houston, 3.5 hours. Layover 2, Denver, 2 hours. Layover 3, San Francisco, overnight arrival. Final destination next morning, 9:30 a.m., 3 layovers. Overnight travel. And all this for a 4-day trip? I scrolled down further. Basic economy. No bags, no meal, no cancellation or changes. It didn't sit right. I checked the other email Lynn had forwarded, which included the address of the hotel and a list of the family's confirmed check-ins. Her, my son Brian, the kids, and even Lynn's mother. Their flight? Direct. Mid-morning. Premium economy. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. Surely it was a mistake. A mix-up. Maybe they couldn't book me on the same flight? But I knew better. This wasn't an oversight. It was strategic. They were sending me ahead, separate, exhausted, and invisible. The next morning, my grandson, Jeremy, called me. He's 15, doesn't know how to lie properly yet. "Grandma, Mum said you're flying way earlier. Isn't that weird?" I chuckled softly. "It is, sweetheart. But maybe they thought I'd need more time to rest." He hesitated. "She said you'd slow everyone down." There it was. No code, no courtesy, just the truth, straight from a teenager's tongue. I didn't respond, just thanked him, hung up the phone, and stared at the wall. My hands were shaking. But not from sadness, from clarity. This wasn't just a flight. It was an exile, with a boarding pass. And they thought I wouldn't notice. Oh, but I did. By the next afternoon, I had pulled out my small maroon suitcase and laid it open on the bed. Half packed, half stalled. My hands paused over a pair of orthopedic sandals, and something about placing them neatly into the corner of the case made my chest tighten. They didn't want me there. Not really. I wasn't invited to be part of the fun or the memories. I was booked separately, early and out of sight, like luggage they didn't want to carry. Still, I told myself, maybe there was some logical reason. Maybe it was cheaper. Maybe the flights sold out. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called the airline myself. "Thank you for calling Sparrow Air. This is Daisy. How can I help you?" "Hi, sweetheart," I said with the most pleasant tone I could summon. "I just wanted to confirm my upcoming itinerary. My name's Doris Langley. I have a flight this Friday morning with layovers in Houston, Denver, and somewhere else, I think." I could hear her typing quickly. "Yes, ma'am. You're booked on flight 142 with connections through Houston, Denver, and San Francisco. You're in basic economy." No checked luggage. No seat selection. Non-refundable. Non-changeable. She paused. Are you aware you're on a 19-hour travel plan? I bit my lip. Yes, I see that now. I thought I might be on the same flight as my family. Let me check. Do you have any of their names? I gave her my son's name, Brian Langley. Then Lynn. Then Jeremy and Ava, the grandkids. Another pause. Click. Click. Oh, they're flying out at 10:15 a.m. non-stop to San Diego. They're in premium economy, upgraded cabin, meals included. And it looks like they used the same group booking account. Group booking account. They booked themselves together. And me. Separately. I thanked her and hung up, the phone slipping slowly from my hand like it had turned to ice. I sat on the edge of the bed, numb. The suitcase lay open before me like a coffin. Why go to such lengths to make me feel so small? I closed my eyes, and in that heavy silence, I started to remember. Memories I'd buried. Like last Thanksgiving, when they forgot to pick me up. Lynn had said traffic was awful, and by the time they got there, they were too full for dinner anyway. I'd eaten a microwaved turkey sandwich on my porch. Or the birthday where Jeremy hugged me in the hallway and whispered, "Mum says you talk too much, but I like your stories." Or when Lynn had half joked. Half, at brunch. I don't know how you survived this long without a filter, Mum. You say things that make people so uncomfortable. They didn't want me with them. They wanted me. Near enough to check a box, but far enough not to disrupt their curated life. I wasn't family. I was a formality. A piece of old furniture too large for the new apartment. But I wasn't angry yet. No, not yet. That came later, after I found the voicemail. I'd been searching for a hotel confirmation Lynn said she sent when I noticed an audio file in my texts, probably sent by accident. I hit play. My son's voice filled the room. It'll be easier this way, trust me. She gets in first, probably too tired to join anything. We'll say we tried. She'll stay out of the way. Then Lynn chimed in, laughing. Worst case, she gets stuck at some airport. She won't even know who to ask. Silence. Then Brian said it. The words I'd never forget. She's old, not stupid, but she's close. Something in me snapped. Not all at once, not loudly. Just a clean, sharp split, like a cold wind through a cracked window. They had made a grave mistake, because I wasn't stupid. And I certainly wasn't going to fly halfway across the country on 3 layovers, just to be discarded quietly at baggage claim. The next morning, the suitcase was still open on my bed, but I had stopped packing. Instead, I was seated at my kitchen table with a mug of black coffee and a small notepad. On it, I had scribbled one word, over and over, dignity. That was what they had taken, not my seat, not my schedule, my dignity. But I wasn't going to beg for it back. I was going to take it, quietly, decisively, and with grace. I flipped the page and wrote out a list, not of what I needed to bring, but what I needed to do. The first thing on it, call the airline again. This time, I didn't pretend to be clueless. I gave the agent my details, confirmed the itinerary, then asked the question that changed everything. Is there still a seat available? On flight 1703? The direct flight, the one the rest of my family's on. Yes, ma'am, she replied. Actually, we have one seat left, in first class. How much? I asked. She gave me a number that made my chest tighten, but not from fear. I had the money, I just hadn't used it. For years, I'd been the family fallback, always saving, always available. It was time I used a bit of it. For me. I'll take it, I said. I cancelled the 3 layover journey they'd thrown at me like a bone to a dog. Non-refundable? Fine, let it rot. That seat could stay empty like the promises they'd made. And then I made 2 more moves. First, I booked a private car to the airport an hour before their scheduled ride and through a different terminal entrance. They wouldn't even know I was there. Second, I logged into the old joint credit card account my son had begged me to co-sign years ago, back when they were struggling. I'd left the card alone for years, never used it, but my name was still there. I still had admin access, and they'd used it for all their trip expenses, flights, hotel, car rentals, excursions. They hadn't even bothered to change the password. I didn't touch anything. Yet. But the seed had been planted. That evening, I packed again. This time, with purpose. A linen blouse I'd saved for something special. A book of poetry. Sandals that made me feel elegant. Lipstick I hadn't worn in years. Nothing flashy. Just me, as I deserved to be. The next morning, as the sky still wore its dawn blush, I stood at the curb outside my building, suitcase beside me, coat draped neatly over my arm. The black car pulled up smoothly. The driver got out, tipped his hat, and opened the door. "Mrs. Langley?" I smiled. "That's me." We drove past their house on the way to the airport. Their lights were just flicking on. They'd be waking up soon, hustling the kids, rushing to meet their own ride. And they'd have no idea. I was already ahead of them. At the terminal, I breezed through security, strolled into the lounge, and sat with a mimosa in hand. I looked out the window, watching the clouds shift over the wing of the plane I'd soon be boarding. And when I stepped onto that flight, first class, seat 2A, I felt something I hadn't in years. Seen, centered, certain. And then they boarded. Absolutely his. They boarded late, as always. Brian with his rolling duffel bag, Lynn fussing with Jeremy's hoodie, Ava already glued to her phone. I watched them from behind the first-class divider. My seat had a perfect line of sight to the aisle. And I watched, calmly, as they walked past me without so much as a glance. I could have reached out and brushed Brian's shoulder, and he wouldn't have noticed. Invisible, just like they wanted me. Lynn was complaining. "I told you we should have upgraded to first. These kids are going to whine the whole flight." Jeremy muttered, "At least we're not stuck in some Houston layover like Grandma." They chuckled at that. Brian added, "She probably hasn't even boarded yet, or worse, got lost in Denver." I took a sip of orange juice from a glass flute. It tasted better than I expected. We took off smoothly. I adjusted my seat, tilted my head back, and closed my eyes for a moment. The air felt thinner in a good way, less heavy, less crowded with expectation. When we reached cruising altitude, I connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi and pulled out my iPad. I hadn't used it much in recent years, but today it was the centerpiece of my plan. I logged into the shared travel app Lynn had set up for convenience. They had sent me the invite years ago, hoping I'd help pay for family trips. I'd declined back then, but apparently the permissions were still active. I opened the dashboard. There it was. Trip name: Family Reunion San Diego, Hotel, Golden Vista Resort, 3 oceanfront rooms, excursions, beach picnic, yacht tour, spa day card on file, the joint account. I stared at the screen for a long time, then tapped the credit card section. Still active, still in my name. They had never removed me, not even after all these years. They probably thought I wouldn't notice, wouldn't care, wouldn't know how. I smiled. They truly believed I'd sit quietly, somewhere over Nebraska right now, grateful for crumbs and carry-ons. Instead, I was sipping chilled water in a fully reclining seat, about to dismantle their little beach fantasy from 30,000 feet. But I wasn't angry, not in the way they expected. This wasn't vengeance for vengeance's sake. This was the final line between me and them. I clicked on the hotel reservation, then tapped Modify Guest List. I removed Brian, removed Lynn, removed Jeremy and Ava, then changed the name on all 3 rooms to mine. Then I cancelled their spa appointment, cancelled the yacht tour, and finally, I changed the check-in time to 2 hours earlier. Just before I logged out, I left a note on the account. Travel itinerary revised, charges reassigned, cardholder updated access privileges, D. Langley. And with that, I leaned back in my seat. I wasn't just flying above them. I was moving beyond them. Somewhere behind the curtain, they sat cramped, thinking they were in control. That I was beneath them, lost in some airport terminal with vending machine dinners and aching feet. They had no idea. Not yet. But they would. And soon. The seatbelt sign pinged off, and the cabin lights dimmed. I pulled the soft blanket over my lap and rested my head gently against the window. Below, the mountains cut jagged lines across the earth. Above, the sky was layered in hues of orange and soft lavender. It was the calmest I'd felt in years. But it wasn't over yet. Not until I took back every inch of respect they'd scraped off me. I opened the credit card app next. The joint account Brian had begged me to co-sign a decade ago was still active. I'd only kept it open out of pity, something I wouldn't admit even to myself back then. But today that pity was gone. When I tapped View Charges, the list looked like a teenager's fantasy wish list. Golden Vista Resort, $2,138. Seabreeze Yacht Tours, $880. Sunrise Spa Deluxe Package, $1,200. Family Size SUV Rental, $630. Lynn's Clothing Boutique Spree, $740. Casual Fine Dining Experience, 3 separate restaurants, all prepaid. And all of it under my name. They hadn't just tried to get rid of me, they'd used me. Used my name, my credit, my silence. I tapped Freeze Card. The app paused for a second, then confirmed. Card access has been suspended. I didn't stop there. I contacted the hotel through the app's live chat. Good afternoon, this is Doris Langley. Due to a change in our family travel plans, only I will be checking in under the reservation. I'll be arriving ahead of schedule. Kindly ensure that no other guests are permitted to access the rooms unless approved by me directly. The concierge replied promptly, professional and pleasant. Of course, Mrs. Langley. Noted and updated. We look forward to welcoming you. I logged out and placed the tablet gently in my lap. That was it. That little tap had turned the tide. Not because of what I took away from them, but because of what I reclaimed for myself. And in the seat behind me, Lynn was laughing. Loudly. I swear she's probably talking to pigeons in Denver. Oh well, at least we'll have some peace this trip. Brian added, She'll text eventually. Or not. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse of them through the narrow gap between seats. Brian was reclined, his eyes closed. Lynn was flipping through a travel magazine, her lips curled in that familiar smirk. And suddenly I wasn't hurt. I was done. Done excusing their neglect as modern family dynamics. Done shrinking to keep the peace. Done letting them treat me like an afterthought. I pressed the call button. The flight attendant arrived quickly. Yes, ma'am. Could I have another glass of champagne, please? I asked, smiling. Of course. And may I just say you wear first class beautifully? I chuckled, a deep and knowing sound. Thank you, dear. It took me long enough to get here. I glanced out the window again as she walked away. Below, the clouds were starting to thin, the land emerging in pale lines and coastal glimmers. We'd be landing in less than an hour. I leaned back and imagined the front desk clerk's expression when Brian and Lynn tried to check in. No card, no room, no reservations, and no idea what had just happened mid-air. San Diego welcomed me with a breeze that smelled like the sea and sunlight that danced across the sidewalk like it had been waiting just for me. A man in a neat vest stood at the arrivals gate holding a small sign, Mrs. D. Langley, Golden Vista Resort. I smiled and approached. He tipped his hat. Mrs. Langley, your car is waiting. The resort is expecting you. As we pulled away from the terminal, I saw Brian and Lynn's flight listed on the screen above the baggage claim. Still delayed by 20 minutes due to minor turbulence. How poetic. 20 minutes was more than enough. By the time their plane touched down, I was already slipping into my suite at the Golden Vista. A corner room with panoramic ocean views, polished wood floors, and a balcony that looked like it had been stolen from a dream. The manager greeted me personally. Mrs. Langley, we've taken extra care preparing your rooms. Please let us know if there's anything else we can provide. I'll be dining in my room tonight, I said, and I'd appreciate a pot of tea delivered to the balcony around sunset. Absolutely. And just like that, I was no longer the burden, no longer the inconvenience. I was the guest of honor. At 4:12 p.m., I settled into the lounge chair on the balcony, soft jazz humming from the speakers, and watched the waves roll in. At 4:27, I heard a distant commotion below. I stood slowly and looked over the railing. There they were. Brian, Lynn, Jeremy, and Ava, arguing with the front desk. Lynn's voice, sharp and rising, carried upward. What do you mean the reservation was changed? We made these bookings months ago. The clerk remained calm. Ma'am, we've confirmed that only Mrs. Langley is listed as a guest under this account. The card on file was frozen mid-flight. Unless you can provide a new payment method, we're unable to check you in. Ava groaned. Jeremy sat on one of their suitcases and buried his face in his hoodie. Brian pulled out his phone, tried to dial. I assumed me, but I'd already silenced their numbers. They were stranded, not in another airport, not lost in Denver or stuck in Houston. They were stranded right in front of me. And I had the view. My tea arrived on time, chamomile with a hint of honey. I lifted the delicate porcelain cup to my lips and smiled as I watched Lynn pace and flail her arms at the front desk manager like a wind-up doll wound too tight. Down below, Brian looked up. His eyes scanned the hotel. I could tell he was trying to spot me. For a second, I wondered if I should step back into the room, hide the moment. But I didn't. I stood still, holding my tea with both hands, gaze steady and unblinking. He saw me. His jaw clenched, his mouth opened slightly. Lynn turned to follow his gaze. Her face paled. And I raised my cup gently in a toast. A silent one. To all the years they pretended I was invisible. To all the holidays I spent in silence. To every accidental insult masked as humor. I toasted to that. Then turned and walked slowly back inside. They didn't knock right away. It took them another 2 hours to find a temporary solution. A dusty roadside motel 6 miles away, with no ocean view, no working AC, and no memory foam anything. The front desk staff offered them bottled water and a sympathetic shrug. By then, I had already finished dinner. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a slice of lemon tart I hadn't planned to eat, but did, slowly and deliberately. At 9:15 p.m., the knock came. 3 hard taps on the polished door. No hesitation, no grace. I let it sit, let them stew on the other side, imagining me packing, or panicking, or ashamed. Then I opened the door. Lynn stood there, arms crossed, nostrils flared. Brian behind her, red-faced and rigid. Ava and Jeremy lingered near the elevator, whispering. "Mum," Brian said, voice tight. "What the hell is going on?" "Hi, Brian," I said softly. "Lynn." They pushed their way in like it was still their house and not my suite. Lynn marched toward the balcony, arms waving. "You cancelled everything. You used the travel app, didn't you? You froze the card." "Yes," I said calmly. "I did." Brian's voice cracked with frustration. "Why would you do that to your own family?" I turned slowly to face them, my hands resting lightly on the back of a velvet chair. "You didn't invite me here as family," I said. You sent me ahead like a package you didn't want to carry. You laughed about it. You made jokes about me getting lost. You used my name, my credit, my kindness. Brian opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. I heard the voicemail. I know what you said. Lynn rolled her eyes. You're blowing this out of proportion. I was supposed to take a 19-hour journey through 3 airports, while you all flew comfortably and arrived refreshed. You knew I'd be exhausted. You planned for it. You hoped I'd opt out last minute or collapse in transit. Brian looked down. He didn't deny it. Why didn't you just talk to us? He muttered. I stepped closer, not angry, just clear. Because talking hasn't worked in years, Brian. When I speak, you all hear noise. When I show up, you all see a delay. But when you needed a co-signer, a babysitter, a holiday chef, you saw me then. Lynn's lips twitched. She wasn't used to not having the last word. I didn't ruin your trip, I added. You did that yourselves. I simply stopped funding it. Brian took a deep breath. So what now? You enjoy your motel, I said. Check out the local diner, take a long walk, reflect. Lynn huffed. You're unbelievable. No, I said, stepping back toward the door. I'm done being unbelievable. I'm seen now. They stood there in awkward silence. I'll call a cab, Brian said flatly. No need, I said. I already requested one for you. It'll be downstairs in 2 minutes. He looked up, confused. I'm not cruel, I said. Just finished. They left without another word. As the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for decades. I returned to the balcony. The sea was still speaking in gentle rhythms, and the air tasted like freedom. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a passenger. I felt like the pilot,